Okay, so welcome to part two. This assignment, in this video, we're going to talk about how to make the section drawings, which will be a little bit different from the other orthographics, plan and elevations, and how to make the axonometric or the isometric drawing. So this is kind of where we left off. I just finished up drawing the other elevation and the plan. One thing I wanted to point out is, for example, down here in this plan, we've yet to draw the handle. So one thing that I think might be really useful in doing that is to show it as a dashed line. I wanted to point out kind of how to do that. And as I do that, I'm also going to point out a couple other things about setting up your lines and your layers. So I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call it dash. And I'm going to change it to dark blue. And so now anything I draw on that layer, when I go to print or export this drawing, I want it to show up as a dashed line. The other thing we can specify in here is a line type in our layers panel. So right here next to where it says dash, under line type, I'm going to click where it says continuous. And I have a couple of options in here that are default. I'm just going to click the dashed one right now, and we'll kind of see how that looks. I'm going to draw a new line, just from midpoint to midpoint as a kind of center line. Make sure it's on that new layer that I've created. Okay, that actually looks pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and just leave that for right now. The other thing I'm going to do is offset this guy. Again, we know the width of it is 1/2 inch. I'm going to offset it by 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to choose the option both sides. Pull that on. Okay. Leave the center. Well, I'll leave this in line for a second. The other thing that you may run into is, like, say I have this line that ends here and I want it to extend past there. So I want to edit this line to go further, right? Because actually, if we're looking at it from the top, we would also be seeing the side of this handle that extends past the side of the wood side of the box, right? So I want to extend these lines out by 1/8 of an inch by the thickness of the material. So there's a few different ways you can do that. One way is just to select the lines, and we can use this option to show the control points of any line. And it's just called points on. So there's two buttons here. There's one that's edit points, and there's one that's points on. We're just going to use points on for right now, and you can see that that turns on the control points for these lines. And because they're just lines, they just have start and an end point. They just have 2 points. Polylines, of course, because they're composed of more lines. For example, this rectangle has 4 control points. And if we go to, like, one of these curved lines, you can see it has a bunch of control points, right? Because it has, it's showing this curvature. So what we would want to do is, and you can also do them, so when you click on a line just one at a time, I think it also automatically will show the control points. So if you just clicked 2 lines at a time, or 1 line at a time, you can get them to show up that way. But if you want to show, like, points on for a bunch of things at once, you just select them all and you click that option. And I'm just hitting escape also, by the way, to get them to disappear again. Okay, so if we wanted to make these lines extend a little bit, we could select those endpoints, use the command move, and just click anywhere and move it by 1/8 of an inch, 1 divided by 8. And I'm holding shift to snap to ortho, and I've just moved those endpoints 1/8 of an inch. So that's about where we would see the end of our handle in plan, right? And another way to do that, well, because we have our construction lines here, if I make a new construction line, the other way to do it is, if we know how far it needs to extend, we can actually use a command called extend. And when you extend something, you basically need to set a boundary. So if I just type extend without anything selected, it'll ask me for a boundary object, or I can also enter a length here. So I could enter my 1/8 inch and then click on those lines. But I'm going to go ahead and just use a boundary because I have this line. And once I've set that line as my boundary, I'll press enter. And then it's asking me which curves do I want to extend. I'm going to extend all these lines. So I just click each one, and you can see they get extended right to the edge of where that new construction line is. Okay, so that's a couple different ways of extending those lines. Draw an end on here as well. Okay, great. So that's our handle from the top, and you know, so like the kind of convention with plans is to show things that are like above the cut. So, for example, if we're looking, you know, from here down, we're seeing the handle. The handle is like above where we're looking, and that's why it's a dashed line. So that's one way to kind of show it without kind of interrupting our drawing of our box. Of course, if we were to cut through like that, we would also see the parts of the handle cut through. So I could make a rectangle with my medium line weight there, indicate that that's where we're cutting through the ends of the handle. Okay, and then the other thing that we might want to show is again the twist. And the twist should be the same from any projection, top or side. I'm just going to go ahead and copy these lines. And that's copy, not Control-C. And I'm going to move them until they're perpendicular there. And I'll just spread them out. Okay, and then I'll change them to my dash line. And I think the way we would actually see that is it would look more like this. This should actually be on the center line, I believe. Okay. We'll trim away the parts of these lines we don't want to see anymore. This guy I can delete. Okay. So that's what our handle would look like from above. And so that gives you a sense of kind of how we would go about, and actually I should point out, so, you know, kind of up until now I've been line weighting just the way you would manually drafting, like, you know, so my medium is obviously a heavier line weight than my light line weight, and I've been working kind of by putting certain lines on those layers depending on how close they are to the picture plane, right? So if we're looking at the end of the box, obviously these parts that stick out are a little bit closer than that side. Same is true of my handle. I should trim that line right there. Right, so I've just been working in kind of 2 line weights, and we can add another one later if we find we need it. But I haven't used my heaviest line weight yet, right? Because I haven't cut through anything. So just like I'm about to do with my sections, this little handle here that I'm actually cutting through on my plan to show like the toolbox below the handle, I'm going to put that onto my heavy line weight, right? Because I always want the section cut to be the heaviest line weight. So anytime we're cutting through an object, obviously it's the closest to the picture plane, and so we want it to show up thickest line, the heaviest line weight. Okay, so kind of working from that assumption, I'm going to draw a section. So we have 2 elevations here. That fulfills the requirements, but we also need to draw two sections. So an easy way to draw two sections is just going to be to start by copying the existing section or the existing elevations we have here. Because we already know that those dimensions are right and because we're in the right projection and so on. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to draw another line. So let's see. Actually, what I might do is this. I'll take this construction line here and I'm going to copy it. And rather than copying based on where it's located, I'm going to copy based on the spacing between this drawing and this drawing. So I'm going to click right there. And then I'm going to click over there. And I'm actually just going to copy this drawing and these construction lines to where I just placed that line. That's going to be my section here in a minute. And before I even finish that, I'm just going to quickly copy this line. So another way to copy something when you don't care about how far it's moving is just to start dragging. So in Rhino, I'm sure you know, you can drag, just click and drag stuff, move it around. And if I want to copy it while I'm doing that, I can tap Alt on the keyboard. And you see a little plus sign show up next to my cursor. And I'm holding Shift to constrain it to ortho. I'll move it over there. And so selecting that line, I'm just going to go extend again. And I can also, with extend, use a bunch of lines at the same time. And so I've just extended my construction lines over further. Okay. And if I reference back to my assignment sheet here, if I'm cutting through the middle of this box and I'm looking in one direction, what I'm actually seeing is really only these two sides of the box, the end and the face of that side of the box. And so my section is going to look a lot like this, basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two end pieces. Again, that's where I would be cutting. I would actually be seeing that when I'm cutting through, right? I'd be seeing these two sides. And in order to extend them up, like I did before, I can grab those control points and move them. I can also use the extend command, although these are closed outlines, so I'd have to explode them first. But I'm going to use one other way to do it, which is scale 1D. So in Rhino, when you want to make something bigger or smaller, you use the scale command. And for example, if I want to make something longer but not wider, not like wider by proportion, I can use scale 1D, which stands for one dimension. And in order to scale something to a specific length, right? So I want to make it longer in this dimension, but not wider. So I'm going to snap my my cursor, or I'm sorry, my 2 points to that dimension. So now you can see I'm just scaling it in that dimension, I'm just making it longer or shorter. And I'm going to snap to up there. And there we go. So those are the sides of our box. I can actually lock my construction lines here since I'm getting in the way. And I'm going to put those on my heavy line weight. Because again, now that I'm working in section, I would be seeing that as cut through. The other thing that I would need to edit here is the base. So again, we would actually be seeing this as cut through. I'm going to go ahead and just add these to a heavy line weight right now. Also going to add another line, so we'd also be seeing the inside, that. We'd also be seeing the bottom like that. Okay, so we'd be seeing the whole bottom. Now I'm going to trim those away, so we would just be seeing the bottom of the back of the box from the side. And let me see my missing lines. Oh, somehow I deleted those sides, these pieces that stick out there, but that's okay. I can just draw them again pretty quick. I'll use polyline. I go to my light line weight. Again, I'm just going to mirror that because that's the fastest way. Oops. So yeah, when you mirror something, I should point out, you can copy it or not. So this option copy right now is set to no, and that's why it just moved it from one side to the other, right? So it kind of like deleted the first one. So I want to make sure I have my copy option set to yes. That way when I copy it, I get a duplicate. Okay, and then the only other thing to show would be we'd be seeing the middle of the handle, and we'd be seeing kind of mirror this as well. And then the back of the handle, we'd actually make that a lighter line weight. And I could even, so right here, for example, if I wanted to show this, and again, that would actually be behind like that's behind the back of the box. So right here, like I'm looking this direction. So the side of that handle is beyond the back face of the box. But if I wanted to show it in this drawing, and I wanted to show like what it would be behind, I could do the same thing as if I were showing something like above the section cut. So if I wanted to separate this line into two pieces, one thing I could do is I could trim it, right? Right, but that would actually delete part of it, right? And I don't actually want to delete it. I just want to separate it into two elements, so I can put them on separate layers, put the pieces on separate layers. So instead of trimming it, I can use a different command called split, and I can use that line there as my splitting line, kind of like I would if I trimmed. And you can see that it'll actually just separate it along that line, but it won't delete either half. It'll just split it into two things, right? So then I can take this lower line and I can change it to the dash. And so that would be kind of like what it would look like beyond the side of the box. Okay, so the other section will be drawn very much the same way. I'm going to leave it to you guys to do that. And then I'm going to get into how to draw the kind of the axonometric. So what I want to do first is actually go and type in options in the command line. And that'll open up this Rhino Options window like we used in the first video. I believe you can also get to it by going to edit. I don't remember how you get to it. Oh, file properties. Okay, so that's another way to get to it. So this menu is all kind of the same, right? We can get to the same set of options in either way. But I just typically type options in the command line because it's a little easier. Okay, and then we're going to go up, or sorry, down into Rhino Options to this section where it says Modeling Aids. And that's like, where we can set up kind of some of the details of how movement works or how the interface works. What I actually want to do here is up above where it says Grid Snap, right here where it says Ortho Snap Every, and there's a text box. And so yours, by default, should say 90. And if I want to draw an isometric, where I'm drawing along 30-degree lines, right? An isometric is like 30 degrees. I'm going to change my ortho snap every 30 degrees. So make sure you enter 30 in that box, and then go ahead and click OK. And I'll show you, really quick, I'll show you just like why we do that. So like I'm holding Shift right now to snap to ortho. Right, so I can actually draw kind of like I would draw an isometric. By using that 30-degree ortho snap. And that's exactly what we're going to do to draw the toolbox as an axonometric. Again, I can use the same dimensions I've already defined from these drawings. So for example, I know that this part is, and by the way, if you ever want to measure something, I should have mentioned this before. can use the command distance. And so if I type in distance, I can just click 2 points, and boom, I'm at 16 inches. The other thing I can use sometimes when you're drawing something, for example, if I just draw a line, we look right here, it'll give me some information about that line, right? So I know that if I'm snapped to those 2 points, that that'll be a 16-inch line if I click that point, right? That's another way we can kind of keep track of our dimensions. And then, later on in this series of videos, I'm going to show you how to actually add like dimensions to your drawing, and we'll get into that later. So I'm just going to work off to the side here. Actually, maybe I'll work up above, just kind of in a new area. And I'm going to start by drawing some lines. Again, you can use the construction lines if you'd like to. And I'm going to just start typing in my dimensions, right? Just like I would with an isometric. I'm holding shift now. I've already typed 16, so just like before. And I can measure here to here. I know that's the 5 3/8 is the overall height of that side. So I can draw a new line. 5.375. Okay. And I know that 5/8 is the thickness, 5 divided by 8. Oops, what that? 5 divided by 8. Okay. So now we've drawn kind of the outside dimensions of that side of the box, right? And if I use distance again, I can go from there to there, and we can see down at the bottom, or if I click, that's 7/8 of an inch, or 0.875. And so I wanted to show that accurately. Oh, and then also we need the distance from the top that our line is. So that's 2 3/4 of an inch. Right, so I can draw see, let me just draw a line. That's 7/8 right now. And I could move it to the top and then move it down 2 3/4 of an inch. Okay, and then we know it's sticking out further at the bottom and it's cut away on the top. I'm going to just kind of trace out where that top would be. Again, and I'm holding shift on my keyboard to snap to ortho. And then I could trim away the rest of these lines that I don't see. There we go. So I've drawn that corner. Well, copy this line and move it 2 3/4. Again, I can just copy this line and trim away all what I don't need. There we go. So that's kind of what that piece would look like from that side. Now, I guess what I should point out here is, so again, as we draw bit by bit, we're not necessarily going to see all this stuff. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of just drawing each part so I can really see how it's all going to fit together in my mind as I go. And that's why I'm working on construction lines. But what we are going to do at the end, and if you reference back to our assignment, it actually says to draw an exploded axonometric. And like in the example, what that means is we're going to draw an axon and we're also going to pull off we're going to explode off some of the pieces so that we can show like, what are all the parts that go into this toolbox. And so, for example, like these two sides, the long sides are identical, right? The short sides are identical. So basically, we could build this box by fabricating two identical sides on each length and then one bottom, right? So we're going to pull off one of each of those elements and kind of show it as like this is one of the parts, even though there's two of them. Okay, so let me keep going here. Do some more measuring. So that guy is 6 inches. And the height of it is 6 inches. And it extends past the end of my long side, 1/4 of an inch. I'll start with that, 0.25, 5/8. And I'm using Smart Track here, holding Shift. And we know this edge is 6 inches long. This edge is 5/8 long. We know this edge is 2 3/4, 2.75. And I guess if that is 5/8 plus 1/4, it'd be at about 7/8. 7 divided by 8. And 2 3/4, or 6 minus 2 3/4, 3 1/4. Okay. Our way back here. Sometimes you'll find that the Smart Track will actually get in the way, so you can do the same thing. You can hover over those Smart Track points just to kind of figure out to kind of deactivate them. That way it'll be a little easier. Turn that excess away. Okay. Okay. So what I am going to do right now, since I already have all these lines kind of traced out, I'm going to copy each one. And in doing that, so like I mentioned a moment ago, we're actually going to draw an exploded axonometric, and I actually want to show it. I'm going to explode it in that direction. But before I get to that point, select some of those lines that we wouldn't see. So I'm going to copy this guy over there. Let's see. So this point right here, I might be able to snap to. That would be the same part over there. And before I get too far down the road, what I'm actually also going to do is I'm going to select that object I just copied. And I'm going to do that by typing in select SEL. SEL is short for select. There's a whole bunch of different selection commands in Rhino that you can use to kind of quickly select things when your file's getting complex. And I'm going to use last, select last. And so whatever the last command is that I used, that's the stuff that it'll select. So I'm going to copy that guy off to the side because that's one of the pieces that I want to explode. And I'm going to do the same with the long side here. And going to copy it. You would kind of see that over to there. And again, I'll type in select SEL last. And we'll copy it off to the side. And I'm moving it kind of just far enough away that we'd be able to see the whole thing kind of separate from the original drawing. And so then what I might actually do is start to line weight this drawing. So I have kind of these construction lines. Before I get too far, I want to just start to draw over these construction lines and just showing like what I would actually see, because it is starting to get a little bit complex, right? Because we're looking through like a lot of our lines. I'm going to start to draw. Use my medium line weight. I'm going to lock the construction line there. Start to like kind of trace out the lines that we would see. Should make things a little more clear. Of course, you could also just do this by like changing the layers of certain lines. Really up to you. But I'm watching for areas where like right there, right? We're actually looking through one object to another, or one part of the box to another. I'm not tracing that line all the way. I'm going to actually use polyline for some of this stuff. It's a little faster. Okay. And by the way, when you draw with a polyline, one kind of quick trick to use is to, like if I'm drawing a closed outline. So I drew 2 points there, 2 points there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click back at the first point of my line to make a closed outline. If I want to just close my polyline, quick thing I can do is right here where it says close, I can just type C and press enter, and it'll just connect the line back to the first point of the polyline, and it'll automatically finish finish that line by closing it. So it's a kind of shortcut for making closed outlines. And I'm actually also going to, so one thing that'll be important to do is kind of line weight this drawing a little bit differently, because we want to, we want it to be understood in 3 dimensions, right? So we're following different rules. We're following the rules of kind of axonometric drawing, where the profile line is actually the heaviest line weight, right? And so what we would do is some of these interior lines, and I might just explode them. I would start to draw those on a lighter line weight. Right, because that actually looks more like a seam in our line. And the same is true over here. So I'm using my heavier line weight to show kind of the profile. So some things like that I might put on the lighter line weight. Okay. And so I'm going to do the same for these guys right here. Okay. And so I've added the line weights to the sides and the box. That way it kind of, and so if I turn off that construction lines layer, you can see we're just looking at the just looking at the parts that we want to see. The other thing I need to add still is the base and the handle. So again, working my elevation here. If I go distance, I can see the end, 3/8 of an inch. Right, perhaps we should just go all the way to the end there. Oops. Distance. Okay, 5/8 of an inch. Okay, and then I also know it sticks out, it should be 1/4 of an inch. There you go. 1/4 of an inch. Distance. Eighths. I'm sorry, 5/8. 1/4 inch. You know that 1/4 inch is also 1/4 inch above that bottom edge. We know it's 5/8 inch thick. Okay, I'm going to copy that. I'll just copy it right to the end and then move it back 5/8. Okay. That would be the side that we would see. And again, I need to add the proper line weights with that. Load that. So this guy needs to be split, right? Because it would no longer, we need to show it in 2 parts. Part of it the medium, part of it the light line weight. I can type in split. I split that guy. I want to split it right there. And there. Oops, did that wrong. Split right there and right there. This then becomes my heavier line weight. That line, right, that bottom line we don't see. Actually, that line we don't see. There. That I can trim. Oh, I'm sorry, we do see that line. That line we don't. Here we go. Better. And I mean, we could draw this whole thing out. I guess what I would be inclined to do is just kind of start from those lines we just drew. I'm going to copy them down here. And then I'm going to trace out the profile because I know this is just kind of, it's like, you know, a single board with those 2 dados cut in it. I'm just going to trace out the profile on one end and kind of draw my lines based on that. 1/4 inch, 5/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch. Measure the total width of it over here. That's 6 inches. 5/8, 1/4, 1/4. Done that wrong somehow. Huh, how that happened. Okay. So there's our kind of profile there. So these are on the right layer. Okay, and I might just copy this whole set of lines to the other side. See what I don't need. I'm just going to copy this line a bunch of times, a little faster than drawing. Each one point to point. Trim away what I wouldn't see. Okay. Split this guy again because I want to show it as a profile. Okay, there's the bottom. It's actually a little too close. I'm going to move it down more. In fact, I'm going to move everything a little bit. Now, the other thing that I wasn't doing with this drawing because I had construction lines locked. I wasn't bringing to front, like I wasn't putting the lines in front of the construction lines. One thing I can do to quickly move everything up my layers panel, I'm going to select all these layers by holding Shift on the keyboard. I selected 4 layers. You can also do Control, right, one at a time. Right click and go to Select Objects. So I've selected every object on every layer that I have selected in the Layers panel. And I'll just type Bring to Front. I'm not changing the order of any of those layers relative to each other, but I'm just bringing them above the construction lines layer. Okay, so there's pretty much our axonometric drawn out. I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. The next one will cover the details, and then the final one should cover dimensioning and layout.